some amount was some amount of work was done on this particular fluid, and when this work input was given, they found a rise in temperature in this thermometer. So the work done took the system from state point 1 to state point 2. Initial temperature was T1. After some work is done, the temperature rose to T2. Then what we said, this insulation was removed. When this insulation was removed, heat was leaving the system till the temperature T2 went back to T1. And we said W12 was equal to Q21. And whenever you start a process at 1, you are going to some other state 2, and if you are returning back to 1, then that makes it a cycle. So here 1 2 1 is a cycle. During the process 1 2, work input was given as W12. During 2 1, process 2 1, heat was lost. So that is heat rejection, heat 2 1, Q21. And Joules found that this W12 was equal to Q21. And maybe if you have a system wherein there is some work input W1, another work input W2, some other work output W3, and another work output W4. Say there is one heat input Q1, and there are two heat rejections Q2 and Q3. So here I have multiple work and multiple heat transfer. And if all these processes form a cycle, then summation of W is equal to summation of Q. Sorry. Summation of Q is equal to summation of W. And you can write, if W1 is work input, so that will be negative. W2 is work input, that would be negative. W3 and W4, they are positive because they are work output, and this is equal to heat input Q1 minus Q2 minus Q3. The important thing here is whenever I write summation of Q equal to summation of W, that is applicable only to a cycle. And all you guys are telling Q is equal to delta U plus W or delta E plus W. You are saying delta U is equal to Q minus W. At the end of the class, we saw that cyclic integral of this dE is equal to 0. So for a cycle, for any cycle, the change in internal energy, the net or the total change in internal energy will be 0, which means for a cycle, delta U will be 0. So summation of Q will be summation of W. And I don't know why everyone, almost everyone except the last guy, I don't know how that guy was able to at least think that for a cycle summation of Q equal to summation of W. This is fundamental. You see, we are not, I have asked a very simple question, and all of you are making a mistake there, and that is a very serious mistake. Okay, so for a cycle, summation of Q will be summation of W, and for a cycle, so when I say for a cycle, summation of Q is equal to summation of W, it also means summation of delta E or delta U that is equal to 0. Do you understand? Okay. Only for a process, we say Q is equal to delta U plus W, or in a general sense, Q is equal to delta E plus W. Do you understand? Okay. So the next time when I ask this question, none of you should falter there. Okay, so we stopped with this energy as a property of a system, and I showed you the derivation. And this was equation number 1, where delta EA is equal to minus delta EB. And here we have delta EA equal to minus delta EC. We saw this derivation in the previous class. And because the right hand sides are equal, we can say delta EB is equal to delta EC. So this is what we infer. You should know, you should understand something very clearly, what this delta EA is. Delta EA is nothing but the change in the energy when I take the path A. Okay, whenever we write or use this word delta, say delta P, that is P2 minus P1, final pressure minus initial pressure. Delta T, P2 minus T1, final temperature minus initial temperature. Delta U, U2 minus U1, final internal energy, or the internal energy at state point 2 minus internal energy at state point 1. So when I say delta EA, that is nothing but the energy. So here, delta EA, the path A takes you from 1 to 2. So the final point is E2 minus E1. Okay. And now for, if you look at delta EB, delta EB is moving from 2 to 1. So in this case, this guy, for this guy, the final state is 1, the initial state is 2, because I'm moving from 2 to 1. So delta EA, you're taking path A, it is moving from 1 to 2, the final state is 2, initial state is 1, so it is E2 minus E1. Delta EB, so here you are taking path B, the final state is 1, initial state is 2, so it is final state minus initial state. Okay, now I want to tell you that C1 2 1 is a cycle. I'm starting with 1 and I'm finishing with 1, so that makes it a cycle. Okay, and this cycle follows the path AB. For 1 to 2 it followed the path A, for 2 to 1 it followed the path B. So let me find the change, the net change in internal energy. So delta E net. So that is going to be delta EA plus delta EB. What is delta EA? That is E2 minus E1. What is delta EB? That is E1 minus E2. So what is the net change in the internal energy? It's 0. So that is what you should understand. So when we say summation of Q is equal to summation of W, though this is a general formula that Q is equal to delta E plus W for a cycle, this delta E is equal to 0. So Q is equal to W for a cycle. Are you able to understand? Okay. So similarly, you can check for delta EC also. What is delta EC? You are following a different path C, but still the final point, the final state point is 1, the initial state point is 2. And this delta EC is still E1 minus E2. That is why we say this energy is a property of a system, because irrespective of the path that you take, whether you are taking path B or path C, maybe I introduce another path D over here, there is another path D, delta EB, that is also E1 minus E2. So irrespective of what paths you take, you are getting the same answer. Okay, but if you look at work done in path A is different, because area under the curve for path A gives you only this area, which is the work transfer. If you take the work transfer under path B, then it covers this entire area. If you take path D, then this region also comes into picture. This region will also come under work transfer. If you take path D, this area will also come. So when you take different paths, your work transfer, the value of work transfer is different. But if you take different paths to move from 2 to 1, still you are getting the same value for the change in internal energy. That is why we say your change in energy or energy is independent of the path that you take. That is why energy is a property, and because we do not we don't have a mechanism, or it is impossible to measure energy. We just get the change in internal energy. Is that clear? Okay, because energy cannot be created, so which means just like you move from velocity 0 to velocity equal to 1 meter per second, you cannot say, I have zero energy and suddenly I have got more energy. That will not be the case. You will be able to transform energy, but you will not be able to create energy. Okay. In the same way, you cannot also destroy energy. You will be able to only change the form. And as rightly said, first law of thermodynamics it is also called as the law of conservation of energy. So you should be very clear here. Okay, so that is why summation of delta E is equal to 0, or you can say cyclic integral of dE is equal to 0. Is that clear? For a process, we said not only your summation of not only energy in is equal to energy out, but also there can be some amount of energy that can be stored. So what is this different forms in which energy can be stored? Okay. So what we said was, we said Q is equal to delta E plus W. And what are the components of this delta E? Okay. So the energy in storage, that is generally represented as internal energy. So internal energy, we represent it as delta U. Q equal to delta U plus W. Okay. So that is your internal energy, the energy stored in the system. So once again, you can divide this into two components. One is the macroscopic energy model. The other one is the microscopic energy model. In the macroscopic energy model, usually the macroscopic forms of kinetic energy and potential energy are considered for a closed system, because our topic is first law applied to the closed system. Now the first law applied to the closed system. So in a closed system, you don't have any mass transfer. There is no movement of mass across the boundary. So your kinetic energy and potential energy, these guys, they are negligible. So we won't be considering them in a closed system. So for a closed system, these two, kinetic energy and potential energy, they are negligible. Okay. And when you take the microscopic form of the energy, which is in the form of internal energy, okay, we look at the molecular structure or the atomic structure of the system. And that is where in one molecule we'll be able to see, take one electron will have a particular translational energy. It will have some form of rotational energy, some amount of rotational energy, some amount of vibrational energy, some amount of chemical energy, and electronic energy. And then if you look at the nucleus, you will have the nuclear energy. And that is why I told you, if you just break the nucleus of one small particle of sand, you will have enormous amount of energy. That is why you should never say, underestimate any simple molecule in Earth. Everything, though it seems to be silent, though it seems to be dead, a molecule has got immense energy. If you can just break its nucleus, that can destroy a city. History has proof for it. Okay, so you need to understand that that is the kind of energy that is inherent in a substance, in a molecule, in the atomic level. These are all the energies that we have. So all these put together, and we call that as internal energy. Okay. And so we will represent this internal energy as capital U. So capital U is your internal energy. and small u is capital U divided by mass, and you call that as specific internal energy. Okay, and this we already know for an ideal gas there is no intermolecular force of attraction or repulsion, so your internal energy is just taken as the function of temperature only. Okay, and before going into the further part, you should also know why we replace this E in terms of U. So this energy, we normally, the macroscopic form of energy, we represent it as a summation of internal energy, potential energy, kinetic energy, and in the next part, we will be also talking about something called uh, flow energy or flow work. Okay, we saw that a part of it when we talked about work transfer, that is PV. PV is called as the flow work, and in a couple of slides later on, we will see that this U and PV can be combined, and it can be called as enthalpy H. Okay, that we will see a couple of slides later. So your energy will comprise all these things: internal energy, potential energy, kinetic energy, and flow work. Okay, so all these put together forms your energy. But being a closed system, for a closed system, we already said this guy potential energy is negligible, this guy kinetic energy is negligible. There is no flow taking place, so flow work is zero, and therefore for a closed system we replace E with Q. Is that clear? The general representation is delta E plus W. For a closed system, potential energy and kinetic energy is negligible. There is no flow work, so we can replace energy in terms of internal energy alone. Okay, and there is a definition for this internal energy. Okay, and people define this change in internal energy delta U as uh, before defining this, we will define something called as specific heat. Specific heat at constant volume, and this is what we saw. So for an ideal gas, you will have the summation of potential, kinetic, and the internal energy. I took flow work also because that we will be seeing in uh, the first law applied to open systems. So I took that also into account. So because these two guys are negligible, your energy is equal to internal energy. Okay, and that is how we replace dE with du or delta U. So this is another thing which you can always remember. You can write this in the differential form. The first law in the differential form, you can write it as dq is equal to du plus dw. Remember, everything is in caps here. If everything is in caps, then they are uh, this guy is in kilojoule, the normal representation. This guy is also in kilojoule. This guy is also in kilojoule. And when I write this in small letters, then they are specific properties. Okay. So which means this guy is in kilojoule per kilograms. Specific. This is not. You should not call this as specific heat. You should call this as heat transfer per unit mass. And this is specific internal energy. Okay. And this guy is also in kilojoule per kilogram. And this is work done per unit mass. Okay. So everything is per kilogram. So in thermodynamics, you have to be careful when you use the capital letters and the small letters. Whenever we use small letters, that means that particular variable has been divided by mass. Okay. So these two are in differential form. Okay. And the other way of writing it can also be using this delta. Delta Q is equal to du or I'll not instead of du, we will write this as this delta u plus delta w. This is another way of writing it. Okay. And if you write generally, then you write it as q is equal to delta u plus w, or small q is equal to delta small u plus small w. Okay. So though it is not uh, a very big mistake, but you should know what when someone is writing it as writing this in capital letters, and then someone is writing it in small letters. Okay. Okay. Then the next one is specific heat at constant volume. And most of you would have studied this definition in your +1, +2, where Q equal to mCp delta T. Or in some cases, let's start with mCv delta T, where this is applicable when the process is taking place at constant volume. So we define Cv as Q divided by m times delta T. So people normally define the specific heat at constant volume. They define this as the heat raised, or we can say heat required to raise the temperature of a substance by 1 degree centigrade. And the temperature of, instead of saying a substance, temperature of 1 gram of a substance or 1 kilogram of a substance by 1 degree centigrade. So this is the definition that you would have studied. So this is your specific heat. Okay. And this specific heat can also be defined as partial U. I have used the word specific, so this is small u. Partial U, partial T at constant P. Okay. So that is the definition of this specific heat at constant volume. Sorry about that. So partial U, partial T at constant V. So this is the definition of CV. The change in energy, the change in internal energy per change in temperature when the volume is held constant. Okay, so that is your specific heat at constant volume. Okay, and here I want you to observe something. If you look at this, you can see that this guy, specific internal energy, just now in a couple of slides before, we saw that this change in internal energy is a property. Temperature is a property. Volume, specific volume, that is also a property. So all these guys in the right hand side is property. So we can very well say that specific heat at constant volume is also a property. Okay, so specific heat is also a property because all these guys on the right hand side, they are all properties. Okay. So from this definition, I'll just erase these guys.
Sir,
Yes.
sir, are we writing Q by M as delta U?
Q by?
The Q by M as delta U, because from the previous step we have Q by M delta T.
No.
And then
No. I'll explain that. No. No, it's not like that. This is a separate definition. CV is equal to partial U, partial T at constant volume. I'll come there. Okay. So this is the definition. So what is the change in internal energy per for a particular change in temperature when volume is held constant. So that is your specific heat at constant volume. Okay. And so see here, if I have written something else in addition, say for example, just for an example, plus partial P, partial T at something else, say at partial T at constant temperature, something like that, then we can say that this specific heat is dependent on this guy also, pressure also, and temperature also. But now I have only a single entity here, and so I can, because it is only dependent on this and volume is held constant, there is no harm in writing this as du by dt. Okay, and so I can write this as du equal to cv times dt, and this c is small. This is small cv, so specific heat. So cv is specific heat, and there is capital cv, and that is mass multiplied by cv, and this guy is called heat capacitance. So when you multiply that with mass, that becomes heat capacitance. So this guy is kilojoule in kilojoule per kilogram Kelvin, and this guy, because it is multiplied by mass, the unit will be kilojoule per Kelvin. Okay. So this guy, this heat capacitance rate, this you will be using in something called as heat exchangers, and this you will be studying probably in the 5th semester. And there you will talk about this heat capacitance rate. When you want to find the effectiveness of the heat exchanger, you will be using this heat capacitance. Till then, we will be just using CV, specific heat, only for the application. One example where this heat capacitance plays a major role is where you find the effectiveness of the heat exchanger, where in the denominator you will be requiring to find the C minimum of the fluid. Okay, so this is just for your information. So the heat capacitance, we won't be using much, we will be using with specific heat. But when it is multiplied by mass, it becomes capital CV. Okay. So let's come back here. So I can write du is equal to CV times dt. And if I integrate it on both sides, then I will get, if I integrate it on both sides, integrating du, normally we write u, but I have told you in thermodynamics, you will not be able to estimate the internal energy, but you will be able to estimate the change in internal energy. So this is delta U CV times T2 minus T1, or CV times delta T. Okay. If we apply the first law of thermodynamics for a process we know dq is equal to du plus dw, and assuming the process to be quasi-static, we can say dq is equal to du, and for a quasi-static process, and now we are talking about a closed system, so dw should be pdv. Integral dw will be integral pdv, but now we are just talking about dw, so it is simply pdv. So because it is quasi-static, assuming the process to be quasi-static, and because the system is a closed system, I can replace dw with pdv. Remember, now we are talking about specific heat at constant volume. So far, constant volume process, this guy will vanish because dv will be 0. Okay, then what you will have is simply dq is equal to du. and this du is nothing but Cv times dt. And you may now define Cv is equal to dq by dt. This is what you ask. So you are saying q by delta t times m here, and now you are saying delta u by delta t. So are you saying q is equal to q by m or q is equal to delta u? In a sense, mathematically, it seems to be okay. Mathematically, it is fine. But if you look at the physical interpretation or the physical significance of this equation, let me show you. Now in the numerator, I have got dq, and this is heat transfer. And what is this heat transfer? This is a path function. So if it is a path function, then it is not a property, right? What about this guy dt? This guy dt is temperature, which is a property. And technically speaking, I should have written this at constant v, where the specific volume is also a property. But then in the numerator, I have a function which is a path function, which is not a property. And because of this, I may tend to call the specific heat as also a path function, but it is not so. Your CV, irrespective of the path taken, it is going to be the same. Your CV is a property. Okay. Though mathematically, just like you observed very correctly, your Q is equal to delta U, though it is okay in some cases. Later on, if time permits, we will see today or maybe in the next class. We will see for some cases, Q is equal to delta U plus W. This is the first law, right? Okay. Sachin, are you following me?
Yes,
Sachin,
sir. Yes, sir.
the Q is equal to delta U plus W for a constant volume process. For volume equal to constant, what is your work done?
Sir, Q equal to delta U, sir. Work will
Because
vanish.
work done is zero, right? So only for a constant volume process, your Q will be equal to delta U. If this happens to be a pressure equal to constant process, then your W is P times V2 minus V1. Now in this case, your Q is not equal to delta U. Are you getting me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So only for a constant volume process, you will be able to say Q is equal to W. And because we are talking about specific heat at constant volume, we are able to see that dq is equal to du. Okay, so only because of that we are able to say dq is equal to du. Okay, that doesn't mean that this guy is also a path function. So though this is mathematically correct, the physical interpretation is misleading from this particular mathematical equation. Okay, so we better not define CV as dq by dt. Though it is mathematically correct, this is not correct technically. Is that clear? Okay, so the definition of CV is partial u partial t at constant v. So you can define CV as partial u partial t at constant v. This is the correct definition. And this guy, you can also define CV as partial q partial t at constant v. Though it is mathematically correct, this is technically wrong. So if you look at this equation, u, t, and v, all these are properties, and therefore CV is also a property. A similar interpretation you cannot give here because q is not a property. Q is a path function. Okay. So this is what I showed you as a derivation in the previous case. And the next definition here is in the following slide is enthalpy. definition of enthalpy. What is enthalpy? Enthalpy is an energy, okay, which is expressed as U plus PV. So apart from the internal energy, you also take the pressure energy into account. Enthalpy is the energy which takes into account your internal energy as well as the pressure energy. Okay, both of them together give you enthalpy. So this capital H, if you are using, then it is capital U plus P times capital V. If it is small h specific enthalpy, that will be small u plus P times small v. Okay, so that is your enthalpy. And it is an intensive property, which means, what do you mean by an intensive property? It doesn't depend upon the extent of the system. So irrespective of the extent of the system, whether you are dividing that into two or if you are treating it as one, still that property remains the same. Okay. So here, if you apply the first law of thermodynamics, say dq is equal to du plus dw. So for a quasi-static process, and of course this is a closed system, so you can rewrite dq is equal to du plus pdv. Okay, now I have written everything in terms of small letters. Excuse me with this w, I'll make that also small. Now please pay your attention here. I'm just going to make a small rearrangement here with reference to this pdv. In maths, you would have come across an equation d of xy. How can you write d of xy? Can anyone tell me? So we can write this as x dy plus y dx.
Yes,
You
sir.
keep
That's what
x,
we do.
yeah, thank you. So you keep
Okay.
x constant and differentiate y, and then you add it with keeping y constant and differentiating x. So this is the general max. So instead of xy, now I have a term PV, pressure specific volume. So I can write this as PdV plus VdP. Okay. Now I have this guy PdV. So if I want to replace this PdV, I can write this as PdV is equal to D of PV minus VdP. Okay. And if I substitute it here, du plus D of PV minus VdP, this is a differential term du, d of u, and this is another differential term d of pv. And let me write another mathematical rule here, and dx plus d of yz. How can we write this?
So dx plus sir y dz
Okay,
plus z dy sir.
what about the dx?
Sir, that also sir. Plus dy dx.
I'm not asking this actually. Okay, anyhow, thank you. So you have to write it as d of x plus yz. Because it is differentiation, because it is the differential term you have before x and differential term before yz, I can write it as d of x plus yz. And now you can, if you want, you can split it back again, dx plus d of yz. So is the case here. So now I can write this as d of u plus pv minus vdp. Okay, and this u plus pv is nothing but dh. And so I can write dH is dq plus vdp. Okay. And if it is a constant pressure process, then dP is equal to 0. So this guy will vanish, which means dH is equal to dQ when pressure is equal to constant. Is that clear? Okay. So what is the important takeaway is this definition of H, which is U plus PV. And I have shown you this, and that will help us when we talk about specific heat at constant pressure. Okay. So at heat transferred at constant pressure increases the enthalpy of a system. Okay, but the important takeaway is H is equal to U plus PV. This is very, very important. Okay. And you can replace this PV with RT. And we have already seen U is a function of P only. And now R is a constant, and then you have temperature. So on the right-hand side, you have all temperature. So your H or enthalpy is also a function of temperature only. Okay. So that is the definition of enthalpy. And why we require this enthalpy, that will be very clear when we do applied thermodynamics. In applied thermodynamics, we will be using the values of enthalpy in order to get the performance of deriving the efficiencies of Brayton cycle, Rankine cycle in case of gas turbines and steam turbines. Okay, in those cases, heat transfer is evaluated in terms of the change in enthalpies only. Okay, I have already told you a little bit with reference to centrifugal compressor. I have told that example a couple of times. So the air which enters with a near zero velocity, it acquires a lot of kinetic energy, and then that is converted into pressure energy, and it leaves us a high pressure compressed gas or compressed air at the end of the compressor. Okay, similarly, when you take a turbine, you will have a high energy content steam if it is a steam turbine, or a gas in terms of a gas turbine. A high enthalpy gas enters into the turbine. You can imagine the exhaust fan in your kitchen, in your home, in your kitchen, you would have seen exhaust fan. Similar kind of thing, you can assume it or visualize it in terms of gas turbine. So air passes through it. Small kids, small children, they use this fan as a toy. A very small fan. If it is taken under a real fan, it rotates. A similar kind of thing. So when a high enthalpy gas passes over the blades of the turbine, it rotates the blade of the turbine, and that gives us energy. So a high enthalpy gas enters into the turbine and leaves us a low enthalpy gas. So that enthalpy difference will give you the amount of work transfer that has happened. Similarly, in a boiler, water enters with a particular enthalpy. That is what I thought of taking in terms of steam tables. But then the moment I use the word steam tables, it has become online. Your water will have a particular enthalpy, and then when you heat it, it becomes steam. Steam will have a different enthalpy, and you can subtract these two enthalpy values to get what is the heat that has been added, or what is the heat addition that has taken place in the boiler. That you will be doing in applied thermodynamics. So that is where this enthalpy is very, very important, where you will be able to estimate heat transfer and work transfer in thermodynamic devices. Okay. So just like we saw specific heat at constant pressure, you can also define specific heat at specific heat at constant volume. You can also define specific heat at constant pressure. And this guy is nothing but partial H, partial T at constant P. So this is specific heat at constant pressure. So the process has to take place at constant pressure. So that is the change in enthalpy for change in temperature at a constant pressure. So that is the definition of this precipitated constant pressure. A similar kind of definition you can use. Q is also represented as mCp delta T. So your Cp is Q divided by m times delta T. Just like we did for Cv, we can do it here also. Okay, so you can write this Cp as dH by dt, and so you can say dH is Cp times dt, or H is delta H is Cp times T2 minus T1, or Cp times delta T. Okay, so just like we did there, you can also do over here. And then what we did, we use the first law, dq is equal to du plus dw, just like we did in the previous case. You can use retain du, you can write this as pdv, and this pdv you can replace as d of pv minus vdp. I showed you that in the previous slide, so I'm writing it directly. You can write this as u plus pv minus vdp, which is dH minus vdp. So now what we get is dq is equal to dH minus vdp. And for a constant pressure process, this guy will become 0. And so your dq is equal to dH, which is Cp times dt. So you may tend to write this dH as dq by dt, or you may tend to write dH as partial q partial t at constant p. But once again, just like we said in the previous case, we saw enthalpy is a property. Why enthalpy is a property? U plus PV. Internal energy is a property, pressure is a property, specific volume is a property. So enthalpy is obviously a property. So enthalpy is a property, temperature is a property, pressure is a property. So this guy, specifically at constant pressure, is also a property. But when you look at this equation, though it is mathematically correct, temperature and pressure are properties, but heat transfer is not a property, it is a path function. So we may tend to write dH as sorry, this is not dH, this is Cp. So dH is equal to so this is Cp. I'm sorry about that. So we are replacing dH with Cp times dt. So we are comparing dq and Cp times dt. So your Cp is dq by dt. So Cp is partial q partial t at constant p. And so you have to represent Cp in terms of H and not in terms of Q. Okay, just like what we said in case of Cv, we are saying it in terms of Cp as well. The same thing, whatever we have done there, we have done over here. So this is correct. This is the correct form of representation, and this guy is technically wrong. So the explanation, you can also look into pKnark, thermodynamics by pKnark. And then we have one thing called as energy of an isolated system. What is an isolated system? A system where there is no mass transfer, where there is no energy transfer. Nothing in terms of mass and energy or entering into the system or leaving the system, so it is an isolated system. So if we tend to write dq equal to dE plus dW, because it is a closed system, we can write this as dq is equal to du plus dW also. And we know that no heat transfer is going to take place because there is no energy transfer. Whatever heat transfer or work transfer, it has to cross the boundary. But because it is an isolated system, nothing is going to cross the boundary. So this guy is 0, this guy is 0, which means change in the energy is 0. Or in a general sense, let's say change in energy is 0. If the change in energy is 0, what do you mean by mathematically? If dE is equal to 0, if dE is equal to 0, energy is equal to constant. So for an isolated system, because there is no work transfer, there is no heat transfer, dE is equal to 0, which means the energy of an isolated system is always constant. Okay, so and I know that is the interpretation which we get out of it. Then we have something called as perpetual motion mission of the first kind. This is a very simple example. You can see here, I have an engine, and this is called as a uh, fictitious engine. Why it is called as a fictitious engine? The term fictitious comes from the word fiction. Maybe some of you would have watched movies on Star Wars. That is a science fiction, which means it is an imaginary story. So that which is an imaginary story, we call as fiction. So here we have a fictitious engine. Harry Potter stories, imaginary story. Star Wars is a science fiction. Harry Potter is just uh, a kind of a myth, or we can't say myth. When we say myth, the characters of mythological gods come into picture. Though Harry Potter is not portrayed as a god, so you can take that as an imaginary character. Okay. So now let's come back here. So that is the meaning of a fictitious engine. So now we are talking about an engine, and everybody likes this fictitious engine, which is capable of delivering work without taking any heat input. So for a simple 2-stroke engine or a 4-stroke engine, you need to take in air fuel mixture. For any combustion process to complete, so we usually represent combustion using a triangle. 3 things are required. One is oxygen, air. The other one is fuel. The third one is ignition. Some sort of a fire or flame, you can call fire. So fire, fuel, and air. These 3 are required for a combustion process. If any one is missing, you can't have a combustion. You can have fuel, you can have fire, but if there is no air, then also combustion is not possible. You have fuel and oxygen safely stored in the tank, but without any spark, combustion is not going to take place. So you require these 3 for a combustion process. And only when combustion takes place, the heat energy is converted into work. But now I have a fictitious engine, an engine which is a fiction, which is capable of delivering work without taking any form of heat as input. We all like that. If such a kind of engine exists, no need to put petrol, no need for diesel. It will be another magical world where we need not work, we need not study all these. You simply sit in your room, watch your favorite movie or cartoon, whatever it is, or maybe sports. You need not work. Your mother need not cook. Dosa comes to the table automatically. I think in one series of Harry Potter, you have a scene like that where the vessels are washed by itself by some sort of a magic. That kind of mission is what this perpetual motion mission of the first kind. So PMM1, so there can be no mission which would continuously supply mechanical work without some form of energy disappearing simultaneously. So this is sometimes asked as an important 2-mark question. What is PMM1? You may be lucky if you get this. Okay. So that is an engine which is capable of delivering work without taking in some form of energy in the form of input. So that is your PMM1. And there is a converse of this. The reverse of this is you cannot have an engine which is continuously taking in work but not giving out heat. This is a very simple example. You can take the example of a fan, okay, or tube light, any electrical device. Okay, a fan is supposed to rotate. I have switched on the fan. I have turned the knob to the speed level of 2 or 3. The fan is supposed to rotate, but it is not rotating. But the electric current is getting into the coil. The fan is not rotating. What will happen? After some time, what will happen? Let's ask someone. Let's ask Akshit. Mr. Akshit. So you are supplying current to the fan. The fan is not rotating. What will happen to the coil of that fan, Mr. Akshit?
So I cannot produce enough torque
Yes,
to the
the
coil,
fan is
sir.
not rotating. What will happen to the coil? After some time, you will smell something. Coil தீஞ்சு
Yes.
போற வாடை வரும். அதையும் தாண்டி, if you are supplying heat, the fuse will go off. You are supplying work, but the coil, if the intended work is not resulting, or if the intended work is not achieved, then at least the heat energy will go up. Okay, so here they are saying the converse of PMM1, you cannot have an engine which is consuming work but which is not giving out heat. Okay, so that should also be there. So for a work input, some amount of heat energy should, or some amount of heat rejection should happen. Okay, so if it is not there, then such a kind of engine you cannot have. So that is converse of PMM1. PMM1, perpetual motion machine. Perpetual means the term, the English word perpetual means continuous. You can refer to a dictionary. Continuous, or in our terms, we can say non-stop. Break free. You have some cartoon or movie which is break free. Similarly, you have perpetual, which means continuous. The machine is running continuously without taking in heat input, or the machine is taking in work input continuously without rejecting some amount of heat. Both of them not possible. So the first one, it is perpetual motion mission of the first kind, and this example is the converse of the perpetual motion mission of the first